About 3 weeks later, I'm walking by the house. I have to walk by her house to get to my house from school. As I walk by, she says, "Go home and get your mom. And bring your camera." We had an old black and white camera. So, okay. So I went home and told Mom, "Hey, Grandma wants you in the camera." And of course, Mom, "What did you break? And you better tell me." Deal with that all the way over there and stop me at the gate, and this is your last chance. If you did something, you better tell me now. Well, I was 12 years old at the time, so, what would you expect? We walked in, opened the door, and my grandmother's standing there, and I still have the picture today, dressed in an Apache camp dress. She says, "Take the picture." So we're looking at each other. She said, "Take the picture." So, okay, I took the picture and take another one. So I took, unfortunately, I took two because one didn't come out. And so after we took the picture, she says, "Siéntese. We're going to sit there in her little living room." And it was just us, my mom and I, and her. She says, "I'm going to tell you why I'm wearing this dress." So we had never heard her talk more specifically. In general, yes, but not specifically. She said she had promised her mother never to say anything to a soul, to nobody, after her mom had showed her the same thing, a dress she had worn. And in those days they had the kitchen was outside, separate from the house. Went outside, burned the dress. "Don't you ever tell anybody I have this dress or we're Apaches. I will haunt you till we die." So my grandmother, said, of course, well, no, she didn't tell anybody. So my great-grandmother died in 1945. So my grandmother carried this until it was 1962 and never told anybody. And my aunts and uncles, I believe, they knew bits and pieces, but not more specifics. So as we're sitting there, my grandmother says, "Tell you a story. This happened to her mom, my great-grandmother, when she was 8 years old." She said, "Remember el Día de los Gritos, the Day of the Screams?" She says, and we remembered names, dates, and places more by names, not by actual dates. It was in the spring. She says her mom told her she was 8 years old, and they were living in a place called El Remolino, which is, west of Eagle Pass, Del Rio area. It's kind of the end of the road type thing. The road that's going between Del Rio or Acuña, going towards Zaragoza, it's kind of a halfway point, and then there's a road that goes further west, dead ends. And it's just a little town, maybe, can't be very many people, maybe 500 people there, even today. Didn't live in a town, lived near the town, along the river. Her mom had been wakened by shooting and horses running, lots of them. She said hundreds of them, soldiers, shooting, women crying, everybody running all over the place, and they were starting to burn her houses. But her mom, my great-grandmother, grabbed her little year-and-a-half-old baby brother and hid along the riverbank and pulled a bush over them. So they had tied a rope to the root base of this brush to hide. So obviously these things were prepared. They had prepared for these things before. Quemaron todo, including the people. They would drag them into piles and throw them as burning houses and piles of wood, and they would rope them with ropes and drag them into the piles, throw them into the pile. It was American soldiers that had come to kill them. She said hundreds of them. She said as the soldiers were burning all these things, and she was hiding there in the bushes. And later on, I pulled up more records into the archives, and they documented between 4.5 and 5 hours there that they spent burning the village down and destroying everything. Food, animals, everything. They were told to not leave anything. And those orders were from the United States President Grant. Ordered Colonel McKenzie from Fort Clark to do this. But as my grandmother didn't know these details, other than the story that her mom had told her, and she had never told anybody. My grandmother never went to school a day in her life. So she couldn't have read a book, and she didn't know any English. She's telling us a story, and she says before the soldiers left, her mom's little brother started to cry and make some noises. So it drew the attention of the soldiers. So here comes a soldier. It says they ordered her out of the bush, and no, they wouldn't come out. And they're still hiding in the bush, and she stays trying to keep him quiet, and he won't. He's crying. So the soldier took his saber out. She says, "Pochillon." And she described her about 3 feet long, which is a saber. Cavalry soldiers wore in those days. And stabbed the bush until the baby stopped crying. Injured my great-grandmother, but didn't kill her, but she kept quiet. So after the baby stopped crying and the soldier knew, okay, the baby's dead, they went on and eventually got on their horses and left. And my grandmother says, "How does that make you feel?" And my mom's, "I don't know what to say." And so my grandmother directed it at me. "What does that make you feel like? I want you to tell me." I said, "Well, angry." She goes, "No, that's not why I tell you the story. You missed the point. You honor the soldiers for what they did. But who will remember your great-grandmother. If she'd have made one sound, none of us would be here today. Juanita Castro got out of the bush after she heard her brother come, Calixto, and her brother was a little older than her, about 10, 12 years old. And they found each other, and from there they walked to San Juan, Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley, about over 300 miles. This is after the whole village had been destroyed and just annihilated everything in the village. There's a massacre. And they had been there with other relatives and friends in San Juan for about a month when her father arrived, my great-grandfather, Juan Castro. And of course he was just besides himself that he actually had some children that had survived somehow, because he hadn't been in camp. What had happened is the soldiers had scouted the camp and found out that men were out hunting. So it was a good time to attack. Of course, it was a good military tactic. And so that's what they did. There was only one man in camp. He was an elder, and they had taken him prisoner, Costellitos. He was not related to us, but he was taken and he was displayed. You know, we got a chief. He wasn't a chief, but because he was just elderly then. And they just played him around a little bit, and then they just released him. He was just harmless. He's an old guy. The women and children, they took 29 women and children, tied them on the horses, took them back to Fort Clark.